A homegrown distillery, the first to open in Pittsburgh since Prohibition, is now in the running for the Oscars of Food, a James Beard Award. Wigle Whiskey is one of 5 distilleries in the United States to be recognized this year as a semifinalist for Outstanding Wine, Beer, or Spirits Professional. And it's just the latest accolade for the company, which began distilling in Pittsburgh's Strip District in 2011. Since then, it's opened Threadbare Cider House across the Allegheny in Spring Garden. And Meredith Meyer Grelli is back with us. She's co-founder and owner of both Wigle Whiskey and Threadbare Cider, and more to come. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, congratulations on the James Beard thing. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's fun and entirely unexpected and delightful.
It's not something you fill out a long application or whatever to be considered for things like this?
No, you know what? We really had no knowledge about how it all went down. There's a committee that decides the nominations, a national committee, and you know, one of our staff members, when we came out of a meeting, told Alex and I, my husband and I, that were nominated, and we thought it was just like a joke. We said no. And they showed us online, and so I started reaching out to some folks that we know in the industry, asking if they were responsible, and no one would answer.
No one would admit it, even if they did, right? Wasn't that funny? Well, that's really cool then. When it comes out of the blue, that means something.
It's just nice.
But I mean, it's not like you haven't been getting a lot of attention. I mentioned some of the other national recognitions. You've been kind of racking them up on the whiskey side.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. We've had a little bit. It's such a young industry, craft. I mean, whiskey is a very old industry.
Yeah. Talking about the whiskey rebellion in the 1790s around here, yeah.
But craft whiskey is certainly a younger industry, and we've certainly been able to position ourselves as leaders in that space over the past 8 years.
And now it's cider. So now it's apple cider, right? Shades of Johnny Appleseed, who I didn't even realize actually passed through our region a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got really interested in apples through spirits, through the spirits end. We put out a seasonal apple whiskey every year that we developed through a graduate course I teach at Chatham. Actually, the graduate students developed the apple whiskey. And we started working a lot with apple ferments and learning about the history of Johnny Chapman, who was Johnny Appleseed, who was a Pittsburgher for a good bit of his life, and started the hard cider industry throughout the frontier. And
the deal was, in those days, of course, there was no refrigeration, so it's not like you could keep apple juice around, right?
No, that's right.
But if you fermented it,
it was safe to, and in fact, it was safer to drink than the water.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he was providing just a community service.
Oh, absolutely. So what are you making there? I mean, it is hard cider, right? You brought a couple of samples here today, right?
Yeah, we make cider and mead. So we produce mead
is from honey, right?
You got it.
Okay.
Exactly. It's fermented honey. So we use local apples from local orchards, and we ferment those apples into hard cider. So we produce this really in a wine style. So these will remind drinkers more of white wines like Sauvignon Blancs or Champagne even, than maybe the ciders they're familiar with at Giant Eagle.
Okay, so yeah, and I've sampled them and they are quite impressive. It's really fun. It's a great place to tour too for people who've never seen a cidery before and how that works. Got to ask you too about the book. You're now a published author as well, right? So this is kind of the story of the Whiskey Rebellion and the rebirth of rye. So it's both some ancient history and some modern current events, right?
Yeah. So my father and I, Mark Meyer, we wrote this together. So it's we walk through the Whiskey Rebellion, which is a well-told story generally, but then we walk through also the Pittsburgh rye whiskey history after the Whiskey Rebellion, which is actually just as fascinating. It's when Abraham Overholt produces the largest distillery just south of Pittsburgh, and his grandson inherits the distillery. His grandson is Frick.
That's right. Frick came from the Overholt family.
That's
I did actually know that story.
And he sells this distillery off to another famous distilling family, the Mellons.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Who then get into the whiskey business right as Andrew Mellon becomes Secretary of the Treasury. And it just so happens to coincide with Prohibition, which he is responsible for overseeing. as he also owns the largest distillery in the United States. So we tell that part of the story at our barrel house on the north side on that tour. So we wanted to get both of those stories in one place as a Pittsburgh whiskey story, and then the back half of the book we talk about the craft whiskey renaissance.
All right, the book is called The Whiskey Rebellion. I can assume you can buy it where books are sold, like online and stuff, the way it happens at your cider house or wherever. Well, congratulations on how far you've gone in the last 7 years. This is pretty amazing. Meredith Meyer Grelli from Wigle Whiskey, and now Threadbare Cider. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll be back with a little dollars and cents. Stay with us.
Do you have trouble getting up and down the stairs like you used to? Do you wish you could